Welcome to Teaching That Counts, a podcast dedicated to the teaching and learning of mathematics. We discuss a variety of topics from building thinking classrooms to creating a more equitable math class. I hope that the conversations that I have with my guests help inspire you in your own classroom, school, or district, or if you're a parent like me, with your child's mathematics journey. You can find me via my website, teachingthatcountspodcast.com, or on socials at MyEstisTeach. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. Well, welcome back to the Teaching That Counts podcast. I'm so happy to be back from a little bit of a hiatus here. It's been about a month. We took some time off for the holidays, so Happy New Year to everyone. I hope the holidays were great. I hope the new year is getting off to a good start, especially students, teachers out there, coaches, anyone that works in education. Parents, I hope you're happy that school's starting again, and I hope things are going well. I am, like most of my podcasts, I'm so excited for you to hear this one. I had the opportunity to talk to Cathy Williams, and Cathy is a phenomenal math educator. She works with Joe Bowler in YouCubed. She's actually one of the co-founders of YouCubed. And Cathy has just such a vast knowledge and experience in secondary education, secondary math education. And it was just wonderful to talk to her about her experiences. Some of the things we talked about were her work that she does and just getting students to learn math better. And she does that in many different ways. One of the things she loves to do is make math activities that are really low floor and high ceiling. So we get a chance to talk about that. We get a chance to talk about data science and statistics and the importance of data science in today's world, in today's education, or in today's math education, and the wonderful opportunities that we have for difficult conversations in mathematics. One of the things I loved talking to her about is, and it's one of the things that we've been doing this season on Teaching That Counts, is talking about bringing teacher agency to build on student agency. So how do we get teachers to feel comfortable and confident so that students feel comfortable and confident? And really, how do we support teachers as coaches, as leaders, to get students to be more successful in math, especially given the adoption of the new California math framework? So we have an opportunity to talk a little bit about that framework and how the framework helps us look at our teaching pedagogy and teaching as we look towards the 21st century student and the 21st century adult. Lastly, we talk a little bit about the CMC symposium that we're both going to be at. It's the California Math Council in Bakersfield, the central section. We're going to both be there presenting. So we give a little bit of a preview, I guess, of our presentations and what you can, if you're coming to that symposium, what you can expect from both of our topics. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I had having it with the awesome, wonderful Cathy Williams. Here you go. Enjoy. Well, welcome to the podcast today. So I'm here with Cathy Williams, and I'm so excited to talk to you, Cathy. I know that you came to our district with Joe Bowler well, actually, gosh, it's been almost 2 months now. And I just always love to be in sessions and talk to you and learn from you about really focus on secondary, because I know that your background is in secondary. And I'm excited to talk to you about just what you've been doing, some ways that we can work with teachers in a coach and a leader perspective, and what we can be doing to really work towards the California framework, which has been newly adopted this year. So welcome, Cathy.
Yeah, thanks. It's great for having the chance to sit here and chat with you. There's nothing I like better than chatting about math.
All right. Yeah, me too. So can you just give us a little bit of introduction about the work that you've been doing with YouCubed and the work that you do on a day-to-day basis, and a little bit of that background, because I know that you've worked in secondary schools for quite some time.
Yeah. My history really as a teacher is secondary. I was a high school math teacher for 18 years. And in that time, I got to see lots of things. Curriculum development, I started teaching in the 80s, mid 80s, and saw curriculum development at that time, saw the change of standards even before the Common Core. And the NSF funded curriculums that came out that were just amazing, IMP and Core Plus Mathematics. So anyway, I got to teach from Core Plus Mathematics. That was transformational, and work with avid students and all kinds of things in high school math teaching. Later, it led me to working at a county office, which I highly recommend if anybody's ever wondering about what's next, what's something I can do outside the classroom if I don't want to be a school administrator. I highly recommend curriculum instruction, and the county office is a great place to start. But after that, yeah, I did some of that, and then I worked as a district coach. I actually worked for curriculum companies. I've had a lot of, in these almost 40 years, lots of things I could do. And then also as a district math coach, and then a director of mathematics in a district, just all kinds of opportunities. Just, I like to think of it as seeing the system from so many different angles. And I think that really prepared me for the work I'm doing today at YouCubed, which is working inside a research center at Stanford University. That's what YouCubed is. It's Joe Bohler's research center. It's a nonprofit we started before it went inside Stanford. We had an idea to just give free research-based things away for mathematics, and then it became a research center. So that's been really exciting to get to see the world of mathematics education through the Graduate School of Education at Stanford. And so today my day is really funny. I sit and I talk to Joe a lot. I sit and I think a lot. I talk to amazing people. The connections at Stanford, whether they're in engineering or neuroscience, whatever it might be, just meeting people, and then meeting teachers around the world who are all focused on how do we get students to learn mathematics better.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been my daily but my favorite thing is to create mathematical activities, and also to sit and be a thought partner, sit and work beside teachers or groups of teachers, and see what we can come up with together.
Yeah, I've had the chance to work with some teachers this year doing that, coming up with problems. One of the things that we've been doing, some work that I've been doing is with AP Pre-Calculus. That's a new course,
Yes, it
and
is.
so there's very few resources. So
Right.
it's an opportunity here at the ground level to look, okay, well, we've got some idea, we've got one example, two examples of these free response questions. What can we come up with to make these to make some more examples, some more problems for students to attach to? So that's been one of my fun things to do, is come up with math problems, and I you just do that so well. The ones that I've seen on either youcube.org or a couple of them that we've been working on in some of the things, the presentations that you've given. I love those problems. And what I love the most about those is that they can be utilized in third grade all the way up to calculus. It's just how you spin it and how you get kids to think about those things.
That is something I learned, from Joe. Joe's background in teaching was in England, and she was, grew up in England, was a student in England. So us coming together has been interesting, and that's one of the areas she's really pushed me towards, is that low floor, high ceiling problem. And it is so interesting to see, to have one of those wonderful types of tasks and to see what's a third grader do and what's a fourth grader, and what can you see in their work production and what they talk about during that time. I think that's one of my favorite things, is to try to look and see where are they and where are they, and have an idea of where they're going. And what a wonderful experience for you to, when you have a new course like that and you get to create,
Yeah,
you really get into, okay, what does it mean for an AP pre-calculus course? What
right.
is that, and what should it sound like and look like? All that. That's good times.
Yeah, it's great. And the other, I don't know how involved you've been with this course, data science, out of YouCubed, but I know that we've just newly adopted that course last year. We're in our second year, and I'm helping teachers with that course as well. And that's a new experience. My background with AP statistics and statistics, I taught statistics a little bit at the local university, Stan State here. And so I have some background, some pretty good background in statistics, but data science, the course has so many elements and technology elements that I wasn't used to. And so it's such a robust course. And so I don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit about that. I love the course, and coming up with
Yeah.
some of the things that that course has come up with is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's just it's a candy store to me, and I consider
Yeah.
it like a mathematical stew, plus additional things, right? Be clear down to the creativity of figuring out what's that best data visualization to get this data story across. But yeah, I think in the 80s when we were looking for our students weren't being successful in my first school district, and things still haven't changed, not the way we want them to be, right?
Right.
And so we went into the new NSF had funded these new curriculum. We chose Core Plus. And I don't know if you've ever looked at that, the Core Plus mathematics curriculum. It was Christian Hirsch out of Western Michigan University. They
Uh-huh.
created this incredible program. Back then, of course, the big technology was the graphing calculator, but oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you could put it had like a spreadsheet in it, and you could put in data and you could see and try to model with functions, and it had all these ways to, see how good your models were, the things to look at and get visuals of it. And that class was transformational. That curriculum used real data sets for students to learn functions and to learn modeling. And I never saw so many students get excited about math. So when the data science movement came up, I was all in. I had this
Yeah.
background with Core Plus. I was just like, okay, no, 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 this is good. So I think, it's one of those things and there's so many aspects of it. Like, do our students, as they model with functions and as they work with functions, do they really read a graph with literacy and those types of things? And so I think as we walked through the data science process and looked at the other curriculums at YouCubed, our team worked together and looked at a lot of different things. And then our approach to teaching, that's when we started to settle into, okay, project-based, what are these big topics? What are data sets that even a high school student would be interested in?
Yeah.
And what I love most about one of the things that we settled on was, well, we know we have to offer data sets in the beginning, but the future of this really should be the teacher and the students together figuring out what data sets would work for the learning that they're in the process of and really making it relevant for where they are. So I love that. And that's why, the adaptable word came into the title of our data science, because we thought, well, we want to create this, but we hope that after a few years, teachers will really curate some data sets and with their students and bring, real real world problems to the table inside their math classes.
Yeah, and real culturally relevant
Hmm.
to where they are, depending on where they live and
Hmm.
what their experiences have been. I know one of my favorite activities in that course is the one with skin tone.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with a teacher about our experiences as Latino males growing up and
Hmm.
skin tone and our students' experiences with that. And they relate. They relate. And I was given an example of how even within families, a sibling might be darker toned than the other, and they live a different life experience. Just the way that people react to them, the way that they see themselves in media. And I think that those are wonderful opportunities in our curriculum to allow those conversations to happen in using mathematics. When I was teaching statistics, I would bring up things that were difficult conversations. And granted, I could do this much easier at a university than I could at. I guess I felt more comfortable doing it at a university and having these conversations, but we just come back to the data. Like this is
Yeah.
this is what the data are telling us. even if you have your own viewpoint and experience, how can we bring those experiences to what the data are showing us? And I love that activity.
Yeah, that activity, that's when, to me, that is what a data that represents what our students are ready for. What they want, they're ready for these conversations. They want to have these conversations. And that really, I love, that you love that one. It just brings up those things we really should sit and talk about. Math class becomes something way more than the math class I experienced when I was in school, and probably what you experienced.
Yeah,
It,
absolutely.
it becomes something that, is relevant, and maybe it has, there's some teachers that they find that unit, we had to make a replacement unit for it because there were some that said, no, not there yet. Can't. And so, I hope that, eventually we get to a point where people see that, we can have these conversations in math classes, that we can be a safe space, and we can look at real data and talk about what the data is telling us.
And I think we have such a wonderful opportunity in California with that now being requiring ethnic studies as a course for
Yes,
graduation. I think we shouldn't be afraid of opportunities like that because kids are going to have those conversations in ethnic studies as well.
absolutely. And the best learning is when kids can see the connections, not only within the content area they're in, but in the content areas that they're studying around, all
Yeah.
the different ones. Yeah, it's time.
Yeah, definitely. So let me go back to something you said a second ago about the way we teach math, because I know that we've been working on a problem-based approach, and it seems to me that that the way we teach math is new or different, but I think that's the perception that we're getting. But I've been teaching for like this is my 25th year, and you've been teaching, you've been in education much longer than I have. But I remember in my credential program back in 1999, we were talking about constructivism back then, and we were looking at problem-based learning and collaboration. My first job, I used CPM material,
Oh
college prep
yeah, yeah,
mathematics, and we were doing collaborative groups from the get-go. So
absolutely.
so I guess I feel a little confused when we're coming back to
Mm.
those those elements, those teaching pedagogies.
Right.
And I don't know, did something happen along the way? And what are we looking at? Like, I guess we're going back to that, but how do we support, because I know the framework is really talking about how do we move into using these strategies more often and getting kids to talk. And we've got much more research, much more resources, like 5 practices from NCTM, things that have come out to help teachers. But I work with a lot of, I mean, I'm a coach. I know a lot of coaches listen to this podcast, a lot of admin. How can we as leaders really help support secondary teachers in particular? Because I think those are many times that's the most struggle to move. How can we help support the teachers move, I guess, to just progress? Because I know that you talked about, in other countries, we're just not making as much progress in our country in terms of student success in mathematics as other countries have. How do we learn from that and help teachers get better at those things?
That's really an interesting question. And that is the correction. No matter where I go in the world, people are having this conversation, right? They're
Yeah.
like, how do we do better? Nobody's where they want to be. Nobody is where they believe that all students should be in this secondary experience. And, I consider it my life's work thinking about this. Part of it is I have to go back to, I loved my math classes when I was in high school. Loved the way we were taught. I was not challenged. Um, I wish I would have been challenged now, but I wasn't challenged. I just loved it. It was a pathway that worked for me. So I decided to, after I thought about a lot of other majors, I fell on mathematics, and it kept going, right? And then I was taught to teach the way I had been taught. And then I went out and replicated that. And I remember, probably most people will say, okay, that sounds like my world. And I had an applied math degree, went into education when everybody was trying to pull me into industry. And, but I wanted to teach because I wanted to coach, but that's another story. And in that, those first couple of years, it's like all of a sudden you're looking around going, wait, my students don't love math like I do. I miss something here. And Joe has a similar story to this too, in her growing up and background. But I think, that really caught me. And that's when, in the 90s, these NSF programs were coming out. And you mentioned, what you were learning about constructivism. And, but then, what I consider that first math war.
Yeah.
And I love to reflect with people, that lived it too. Where would we be today if we wouldn't have been stopped back then? If
Yeah.
that rubber band wouldn't have snapped us back in line with the way we'd been taught and the way we'd been taught to teach. And so anyway, so where are we today and what do we do? I put a lot of weight in Steve Leinwand and Eric Milou's book and what they've put together for secondary math. I love what they've spelled out. I think it's an honest piece of work with a lot of information in it. And it says, first we've got to just sit down and have a conversation. And just we have to do a lot of talking together and we have to do math together. The math of the world is not the math in our textbooks.
Yeah.
And so when I think of that, I think of in my former district, the work we were doing, we were sitting beside teachers. We said, who wants to be innovative? And we got a cohort together. And we sat and spent a lot of time looking at research, having people come in and share research with us, doing mathematics together, and really going out and trying an innovative problem and coming back and talking about the student work. What did we learn from this? So that to me is still a system to do it. I think today, is even math part, and they talk about it in their book, Steve and Eric. What's the mission of the math departments? The math departments, can they sit down and even say, what's our goal? What do we believe? And I think that is just a place to start. What is our reason for teaching math to all students with the requirements that we have to teach all of them and lift them up? As I think back, I went into school thinking, oh, I'm just getting everybody ready just like I was. But students were not happy, and then it's a moment of, oh, well, you don't like this. Okay, now I need to think about this more and start reaching out for other things, for other resources. And I think we really have to have a conversation about the reality of what is the purpose of what we're teaching, the whys, and what is the future for all of these students if we didn't teach them what we believe. And if they didn't learn it, we have a lot of students that are not being successful. I think we just need to have a lot of conversations about it. I'm intrigued by how many students I talked to at Stanford that never took calculus in high school. It intrigues me because there's a myth thinking, oh, you got to have calculus if you're going to go into STEM. You have to have it in high school. How many engineers I meet doing real innovative engineering work in industry that didn't take college algebra in high school, let alone calculus.
Yeah.
And they didn't even major in mathematics or physics or, engineering degrees. They've got art majors and I think we've got a big disconnect. We really need to sit down and talk about some reality here. And then meet our students where they are. I mean, seriously, we're still arguing about a 20th century device in our 21st century math classrooms. People are still arguing about whether calculators are fair.
Yeah.
And now we have computers and AI, and it's
right.
I mean, Mathematica was around in the 20th century. That software, I had one of my students from my high school, he's one of my high school students. He came back, he was so proud. He came back from a couple of years of college. He was visiting his mom. And he said, I want you to have this. He handed me his Mathematica software, this box of discs and things.
Yeah.
He said, I want you to have this. You're just going to be so fat. He was so proud that he'd gone off to college and learned it. And I thought, yeah, because we were arguing calculators.
Right. And so I was in college in the 90s. In about 90, I was a math major in 94,
Mhm.
95, and we were using Wolfram Alpha
Mhm.
and Mathematica,
Yeah.
and so we had mathematical programming things that were doing a lot of powerful stuff for us.
Yeah.
Um, and I
And
never really used a calculator like I probably should have in high school.
well, that's what, yeah, I noticed that when I started teaching AP statistics when I was in teaching high school. And the students had come to me their senior year or calculus, it's like they didn't know how to use it. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, we have so much to do and we've got to manage some time to teach this to you as well. Yeah, it's an interesting time, right? And now it's just getting even more more confusing with chat and other things. And what is, I keep asking myself, where's the computational thinking? The computational thinking that Conrad Wolfram talks about. And um, sure, we want students to know how to solve problems. And but where do we spend our time? Do we spend our time having them do what our technology can do? Or do we spend more of our time making sure that they can use that technology and they can use it with full understanding? They know what the input and how to create algorithms, whatever it might be, and they know what the answer means when it comes out and can even, look at it and say, oh, is that right? Is that in the ballpark? Oh no, there must be something wrong. I keep thinking about what does today's high school students need graduating from high school in the 2020s. What does their world look like? That's another reason why I love data science.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a really important point. I always feel like the kids coming out, it's what I love about statistics. It's funny is when I first started teaching statistics, I was like, "Ah, I really don't want to teach stats." And then I started teaching it, and then I started taking more courses on it at the university, and I was like, wow, this is the subject that every person should know. And it's even more evident now when when we have misinformation. We have to have kids to be able to analyze and see misinformation and not get trapped in those holes. And you brought up something funny is I used to tell my students when I taught AP calculus and AP statistics, I used to tell them, look, you need to be smarter than the calculator. The calculator can only do so much, but when you are using the calculator on your tests or you need to be smarter than the calculator. And I think that is something that we can kind of think about not only in calculator use, but Desmos and all of the online resources that we use and AI, because AI can do a lot of stuff with mathematics too. So um, how do we instill those skills into our students that are going to be most beneficial? So that
Yeah.
gets me to a question here
Mm-hmm.
about the mathematical practices.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a real need, I think, for secondary math teachers to focus and integrate the mathematical practices.
Absolutely.
So how can teachers do that? Like, what are some ways, some strategies you think that teachers can infuse those practices within their teaching for their students?
I really like if I was in the classroom today and oh boy, every day I dream about being back in the classroom. That would be, I just want to teach again. Um, Starting out, let's say I have something that I need to teach. Our department is settled on it. This is a really important concept for this class. My thought is I come in with one of those low floor, high ceiling tasks that has that content inside of it. If the students find it, right? Because a big task, who knows what direction they might go. Um, I find they generally go that way with a good task. But anyway, giving that and then just sitting back, watching and listening. What tools do they look for? So there's the using tools strategically. What type of reasoning are they going after? Are they finding patterns in it? Are they starting to use some reasoning from others? Are they falling back on things they've learned and using them here? Are they, what are they wondering about? What are they chattering about? What does the work production look like? What pictures are they drawing? All of these different things. And that's what I love about the big task. That's where I start because it gives me an idea of where are they? What, and then my notations start happening. Where do we need to go? What is some of this? Okay, they're using that language, but I need them to move into some more formal language. Oh, they're living in that part of the number system. I need them to get to, let's say, the real number system or whatever. Kind of playing around and just listening and seeing where are you so that I can meet you where you are. Now, collectively, you have to make those decisions and then push you forward. So that's my idea for me. That would be my style today. I mean, I consider teachers as artists. We all have our own style, and we shouldn't be made to, or even thought to be robots. We all come collectively, but we should be moving along the same learning goals and how we get there, and then discussing the strategies and the things that work for us. So, and maybe as I'm doing this, I learned that I've got to do some direct instruction, perhaps, or maybe I've got to come up with a side activity that isn't as low floor, high ceiling. It's more directed and meeting them where they are, and it's an activity base, or I have all these instructional tools that I can rely on to try to help them get there. I've had some teachers, I love to play. Teachers will say, "Oh yeah, send me a task sometime and I'll be happy to mess with it for you." So I try to catch it before they've introduced something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, "Well, try this." And invariably they're happy. They're just like, "Oh my gosh, I learned this and I that, and they can't stop talking about all the great things. And then they're mad and they say, "I had my 3-week unit planned and now you blew it up. You just ruined it. I have to start over because the things I was going to do, I don't need to do. But now I know the things I need to do and I've got to rearrange everything." So, and we laugh about it, right?
Right.
But that goes back to that, tech pacing guide and the textbooks just kind of going chop, 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 um, that to me is what we have to really strive for, to get away from, to bring teacher agency back to the teacher, so that students then can also have student agency. That teacher can be making relevant decisions for the students that they have in their classroom. I mean, I believe that so many students, I've been this teacher back in the early days. "Oh no, they should be in a different class. They don't have the skills to be in the class I'm teaching," right? Oh boy.
Yeah.
That lasted a few years for me, and I got away from that because I realized it wasn't working, and I didn't really know what the skills were that they had and didn't have. I was just frustrated and looking at these screeners that we were giving. But I think today, with a really good low floor, high ceiling task, we can help kids fill in the gaps that they have.
Yeah.
And I think all students, every one of us, there's always gaps in there. You may have a student that's really high achieving on standardized tests and they have no idea what the answer means. And you may have another student that just can draw their way through anything and kind of figure it out or build it, but they're really struggling with some of the algorithmic work, the computational work. So I just see it as a different type of strategy, perhaps. At least for me, that's what I would offer if someone was going to hire me as a teacher today.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this idea of bringing in students' funds of knowledge, right? And giving them the opportunity to say, "Yeah, this is what I'm bringing to the table." And then the teacher using what they bring to the table to build off of that. I think one thing that's hard about that, though, is that, when I'm doing, just following the curriculum as it is, or I'm just doing direct instruction lessons all the time, I'm not really considering what the students are bringing in and then starting at that level. And then, because it might be, like you said, it might be where they already know half of this stuff. I don't really need to do that.
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
push them to a different place. And so it reminds me of Stand and Deliver, Jaime Escalante, which is, someone I modeled my own teaching by. Was, you have high expectations and the students will rise to those expectations, but you need to know where kids are so that you can push them that way. And I think that's the hardest part about teaching in this way, is that you have to be open and ready and flexible to let students show you where they are and then guide them to that next place.
I think of it today, yeah, like we're a community, a classroom, we're a community of math learners together. I'm learning, you're learning, we're all in this together. Where are we and where do we need to go?
Yeah.
And how are we going to get there together? Um, it is hard, and it takes time, with new teachers coming out, they need something to use,
Yeah.
usually and so we also have those scaffolds for teachers as well as, we may use scaffolds for students and in
Well,
coming into this.
yeah, and I think that there's some publishers out there that are making some really great
Yeah.
resources for teachers, curricular resources, um, that have those guides and integrate, 5 practices, math language routines, all those things that could help teachers navigate this style of teaching and allow students to really productively struggle. I'm thinking things like illustrative math, open up. I know Desmos is coming out with some really cool things.
Exciting.
So
Yeah. Exciting things coming.
yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that.
And here we
Uh,
are and so they can get their hands on technology too. When we're talking about Desmos and things, yes, let's get in and let's get our hands inside on the technology and work mathematics here together.
yeah, I've seen some really cool things with
Yeah.
Desmos. Like,
Mhm.
um, we've got some teachers that they know that stuff really well, and I'm learning
Wow.
from them. I'll tell you that much.
Right.
So we're towards the end of this podcast. I want to ask you a couple of questions. So this question, but this is just a personal question for me. I am going to be part of the California Math Council Symposium in Central in
Mhm.
March, and I saw that you were going to be there as well.
Yeah.
So just a quick, like, I guess, question or plug. What is your session going to be on? So
What am I up to? Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good one. And oh my gosh, you get these and then you start working and tinkering. I have this whole file where I'm tinkering with different things, practicing things when I'm out doing other speaking events. Um, yeah, I was asked to address the big ideas, kind of this big ideas approach. And so I'm going to answer to that and kind of take a look inside. So on, from our conversation here, you're probably thinking, yeah, we're gonna do tasks, or at least one big task. And then we're going to start to look at what does that inform us of. Um, that whole idea of the big idea task, that's a lot of people are challenged with that. How do we think about that? And my idea about the big ideas tasks is finding a big idea that is connected across domains and across standards and give students a chance, because if it's connected like that, they can kind of figure out their pathway towards it. And then it's my chance to take a look and see where they're at. So that's my thinking along the big ideas piece and just talking about what does this mean and hoping, in my session, I'm hoping that it will help them figure out what it means to them, because really my thinking on a big idea task, they need to develop their own thoughts of it. So that's my goal. What are you speaking on? What are you
Oh,
going to?
so I'm going to be doing a session on connecting student voice and students' funds of knowledge. We kind of just talked about that
Yeah.
and using their funds of knowledge to further their mathematical understanding. So we're really looking at. So I've been doing a lot of work with building thinking classrooms over the last couple of years. I had Peter Liljedahl on the podcast at
Uh-huh.
the end of the first season, and we with the county office, my colleague at the county office, we've been talking a lot about the teachers out there, the synthesis piece, the after the students have productively struggled, how do you wrap the mathematics down? And that is the hardest part. I think a lot of teachers are struggling with that piece in
Yeah.
particular. So we're going to focus on that. How do we connect the mathematics using students' funds of knowledge? And we're going to use some video, some modeling, some student
Nice.
interviews, and I'm pretty excited about it.
That sounds great. That is a big thing, right? How do we unpack what the learning is in these
Right,
tasks? What's the content that's there? The other thing I hear, and I'm going to try to go down this pathway as well, is how do I even, if I'm going to teach tomorrow, how do I select a big idea task? How do you even go in and try to pick something that's going to
right.
work?
Yeah.
That's one of the challenges with those tasks is there's so much mathematics possible inside of them,
Uh-huh.
but they're not necessarily organized in a way like a chapter of a textbook,
Right.
that you can hopefully see what's going on there. So yeah, yours sounds great.
Well,
I'll get to see
I,
that.
I will see you in
Yeah,
Bakersfield in
absolutely. I
March.
can't wait. What a
Uh,
wonderful conference.
Cathy, it's wonderful talking to you. I feel like I can talk to you for an hour, like so many more questions and hours, but I know that we got limited time. So maybe again, we'll be able to get together and talk
Yeah,
sometime.
I'd be happy to. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Thank you, Cathy Williams. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.